Good day, everyone. We are the Group 1 and we are here to report the retraction controversy of Jose Rizal. But before anything else, let us first identify what is retraction. Retraction is the action of drawing something back or back in. It is defined as formally taking back something which was said or done. One of the most intriguing issues of Jose Rizal was his alleged retraction, which was all about his reversion to the Catholic faith and all other issues linked to it, such as his marriage to Josephine Bracken. Several historians report that Rizal retracted his anti-Catholic ideas through a document which stated, "I retract with all my heart whatever in my words, writings, publications, and conduct have been contrary to my character as a son of the Catholic Church." However, because there is no certificate of Rizal's Catholic marriage to Josephine Bracken, there are doubts about its legitimacy. There is also the possibility that the retraction document was forged. After analyzing 6 major documents of Rizal, Ricardo Pascual concluded that the retraction document, said to have been discovered in 1935, was not in Rizal's handwriting. Senator Rafael Palma, a famous Mason and former president of the University of the Philippines, claimed that a retraction would be inconsistent with Rizal's character and mature beliefs.
Those who affirm the authenticity of Rizal's retraction are prominent. Philippine historians such as Nick Joaquin, Nicolas Zafra of UP, Leon Maria Guerrero III, Gregorio Zalde, Guillermo Gomez Rivera, Ambet Ocampo, John Schumacher, Antonio Molina, Paul Dumol, and Austin Craig. They take the retraction document as authentic, having been judged as such by foremost expert on the writings of Rizal, Teodoro Calao, a 33rd degree Mason and handwriting expert, known and recognized in our courts of justice, H. Otley Beer and Dr. Jose Rizal, I. Del Rosario, both of UP historians, also refer to 11 eyewitnesses when Rizal wrote his retraction, signed a Catholic prayer book, and recited Catholic prayers, and the multitude who saw him kiss the crucifix before his execution. A grandnephew of Rizal, Father Mandano Guzman, cites that Rizal's 4 confessions were certified by 5 eyewitnesses, 10 qualified eyewitnesses, 7 newspaper and 12 historians and writers including Aglipayan bishops, Mason and anti-clericals. One witness was the head of the Spanish Supreme Court at the time of his notarized declaration and was highly esteemed by Rizal of his integrity.
Because of what he sees as the strength, these direct evidence have been the light of the historical method. In contrast with the merely circumstantial evidence, UP Professor Emeritus of History Nicolas Zafra called the retraction a plain and unadorned fact of history. Guzman attributes the denial of retraction to the blatant disbelief and stubbornness of some Mason. Supporters see in the retraction's results, first, moral courage to recognize his mistakes, his reversion to the true faith, and thus his unfading glory, and return to the ideals of his fathers, which did not diminish his stature as a great patriot. In the contrary, it increased the stature to greatness. On the other hand, Senator Jose Jocno stated, "Surely, whether Rizal died as a Catholic or an apostate adds or detracts nothing for his greatness as a Filipino. Catholic or Mason, Rizal is still Rizal, the hero who courted death to prove to those who deny our patriotism that we know how to die for our duty and our belief."
What is the case against the retraction? Number 1. The retraction document is said to be a forgery. There are 4 prongs to the case against documents itself. First of all, there is the matter of the handwriting. According to Dr. Pascual, the handwriting of the retraction is somewhat different between the usual writing of Rizal. To the date, the only detailed scientific study leading to an attack upon the genesis of the document is that made by Dr. Ricardo R. Pascual of the University of the Philippines, which he incorporated in his book Rizal Beyond the Grave. He also taking as a standard somewhat different and questioned writings of Rizal dating from the last half of December 1896. He also notes a number of variations with the handwriting of the retraction document. The following being the most significant ones according to the present lecturer, which is Dr. Ricardo R. Pascual. Number 1, the slant of the letters in the standard writings gives averages several points higher than the average yielded by the retraction document. Or sinasaan dito na mas mataas ang averages o puntos sa karaniwang sulatin ni Rizal kaysa daw sa kanyang retraction document. Number 2, there are significant variations in the way individual letters are formed. Nakita din daw ni Ricardo R. Pascual na parang may pagkakaiba-iba ang paraan ng pagbuo ng mga titik taliwas sa totoong gawa ni Rizal. Number 3, with reference to the signature. Number 4, there are marked similarities in several aspects between the body of the retraction and the writings of all three signers. So, ang sabi din daw ni Dr. Pascual, may pagkakatulad daw umano ang sulat ng tatlong pumirma as witnesses sa retraction ni Rizal. Thus, serving to the point, Pascual's conclusion that this is a one-man document o isang tao lang ang gumawa at nagpapatunay na hindi nag-retract si Rizal bago siya namatay.
A second prong directed against the authenticity of the document itself is based on the principles of textual criticism. Several critics, beginning so far as I know with Pascual, have noted differences between the text of the document found in 1935 and other versions of the retraction, including the one issued by Father Balaguer. Since this kind of criticism is related to my work in biblical studies, I am now engaged in a major textual study of my own, which consists first of all in gathering together all available forms of the text. To date, it is clear from my own studies that, at least from the morning of December 30, 1896, there have been discounting numerous minor variations. Two distinct forms of the text with significant differences. The one form is represented by the document discovered in 1935 and certain other early records of the retraction. Two phrases in particular are to be noted. In line 6, Iglesia Católica, and in line 10, La Iglesia. The other form of the text is much more common, beginning with the text of Balaguer, published in 1897. In place of Iglesia Católica in line 6, there is the single word Iglesia, and in place of La Iglesia, there appears La Misma Iglesia. There also tend to be consistent differences between the two types of the text in the use of capital letters. The second form also claims to be a true representation of the original. The usual explanation of these differences is that either Father Balaguer or Father Pai made errors in preparing a copy of the original, and these have been transmitted from this earliest copy to others. Father Cabana makes the ingenious suggestion that Father Balaguer made corrections in the formula which he supplied to Rizal, according to the charges which he supplied to Rizal, writing out his own, but he didn't accurately note them all. On the other hand, it would have seemed that the copy would have been carefully compared at the very moment or at some early date before the original disappeared. It is not surprising that some have wondered if the retraction document was fabricated from the wrong version of a retraction statement issued by the religious authorities.
A third argument against the genuineness of the retraction document, which also applies to the retraction itself, is that its content is in part strangely worded. Example, in the Catholic religion, I wish to live and die, yet there was a little time to live, and also Rizal claimed that his retraction was spontaneous. To forge the signature of the capture of Aguinaldo. Runes also includes a letter dated November 10, 1936, from Lorenzo Ador Dionisio, former provincial secretary of Nueva Ecija, who was also present when Roque told his story and confirms it. On the basis of the above arguments taken as a whole, it would seem that there is reasonable ground to at least question the retraction document.
The second main line of argument against the retraction is the claim that other acts and facts do not fit well with the story of the retraction. Those most often referred to by writers beginning with Hermenegildo Cruz in 1912 are as follows. The document of retraction was not made public until 1935. Even members of the family did not see it. It was said to be lost. B. No efforts was made to save Rizal from the death penalty after his signing of the retraction. The usual rebuttal is that Rizal's death was due to political factors, and with this the religious authorities could not interfere. Letter C. Rizal's burial was kept secret. He was buried outside the inner wall of the Paco Cemetery, and the record of his burial was not placed on the page for entries of December 38, but on a special page where at least one other admitted non-penitent is recorded. Or this is perhaps others, the evidence is conflicting. Perhaps the ground outside the wall was sacred also or could have been specially consecrated. To the top that rebuttal, Rizal's Christian burial certificate was discovered on May 18, 1935 in the very same file with the retraction document. The penmanship is admitted by all to be by an amanuensis. Whether the signature is genuine is open to question. Letter T. There is no marriage certificate or public record of the marriage of Rizal with Josephine Bracken. To say that these were not needed is not very convincing. And E. Finally, Rizal's behavior as a whole during his last day at Fort Santiago and during the last 24 hours in particular does not point to a conversion, whether written during the last 24 hours or something somewhat earlier. Rizal's Ultima Adios does not suggest any change in Rizal's thoughts. The letters which Rizal wrote during his last hours do not indicate conversion or even religious turmoil. In the evening, Rizal's mother and sister Trinidad arrive and nothing is said to them about the retraction, although Father Balaguer claims that even in the afternoon Rizal's attitude was beginning to change as he was asking for the formula of retraction. It is all well and good to point out that all the above happened prior to the actual retraction. A question is still present in the minds of many.
The third chief line of argument against the retraction is that it is out of character. This argument has been more persistently and consistently presented than any other. Beginning with the anonymous leaflet of December 31, 1896, it has been asserted or implied in every significant statement against the retraction since that time. It has seemed to many, including the present lecturer, that the retraction is not in keeping with the character of Rizal, as well as inconsistent with his previous declarations of religious thought. Now, first, let us look at the character of the man. Rizal was mature. Anyone acquainted with the facts of his life knows this is so. 35 is not exactly young, and Rizal was more mature than the average at this age. It is not likely then that he would have been shocked into abnormal behavior by the threat of death. He had anticipated for some time that the authorities would destroy him, and even the priest admit that during most of his last 24 hours, Rizal manifested a type of behavior consistent with all that was previously exhibited during his mature years. According to him, he worked closely with the prisoners for some 10 years and accompanied two of them to the scaffold. Their behavior was restrained and consistent. He would have expected results to be the same. Furthermore, in the deepest sense of the word, Rizal was already a believer. In his book, he argued strongly that Rizal was not a free thinker in the usual sense of the word. History, according to him, is full of the unchallenged reports of real conversions, but the most significant meaning of the true conversions is that the change from unbelief to belief, not mere change of ideas. Rizal's conversions is also out of keeping with his mature religious thought. It is not as though Rizal had been bowled over by confrontation with the new thought of Europe and by antagonism towards religious authorities who had endured his family and work hand in hand with a restrictive colonial regime, but had never fully thought through religious convictions. As what I have written elsewhere, the fact that similar views are found from writing to writing of his mature years that they made a quite consistent whole suggests that such theology as he had was fully his own. Rizal had a consistent and meaningful system of Christian thought, and it is therefore harder to think of his suddenly exchanging it for another. But all in all, whether Rizal retracted or not, his greatest contribution in our Philippine history and our independence will still remain. He is one of a legendary hero in our country.